Hello hockey fans, and welcome back to another video. The safety of players in the National Hockey League has become an increasingly important factor with each passing decade. Though injuries will always be present in a contact sport like hockey, the research conducted into the long-term effects of playing the sport, coupled with the technological advances in equipment, has led the league to implement a number of new rules and regulations, such as mandatory visors for new players entering the league, hybrid no-touch icings, and increasing the severity of suspensions handed out for blindside checks or hits to the head. It may sound crazy in the year 2020, but for over half of the league's 103-year history, skaters in the NHL didn't wear helmets. Not only that, but goalies didn't even wear masks either. Instead, these players elected to feel the wind blow through their hair as they glided across the ice, or stop the puck with their face and receive a few extra stitches once the final buzzer sounded. Despite bringing this era of minimal protection to an end over 40 years ago, one player kept the traditions of the old guard alive far longer than anyone else. This is the story of Craig MacTavish, the last NHL player to play without a helmet. In order to tell this roller coaster ride of a tale, allow me to take you back to June 15th, 1978, when the Boston Bruins selected Canadian center Craig MacTavish out of the University of Massachusetts Lowell in the 9th round of the NHL entry draft. Before MacTavish would get his opportunity to suit up in the best hockey league in the world, a year after he was drafted, in August of 1979, the NHL's president at the time, John Ziegler, announced that protective helmets would become mandatory league-wide for players signing their first NHL contract from that day forward, stating that the players would be provided with, quote, an additional safety factor thanks to the protection that helmets would provide them in the years that followed. However, a grandfather clause was agreed upon where players who had already played in the NHL without a helmet and rookies who had signed a pro contract before the cutoff date would still be able to play in the league without a helmet for the rest of their careers, provided they signed a liability waiver with the league, of course. Luckily for MacTavish, he was able to get his first pro contract with the Boston Bruins signed before this deadline. Though he would go on to use a helmet for most if not all of his time with the Bruins, having used one in college before being drafted, MacTavish could still choose to enact this grandfather rule and play without a helmet at any point in his NHL career. And use that rule he would. Following this addition to the league's rulebooks, the Canadian forward would spend the next 3 seasons of his career bouncing between Boston and the AHL before earning a full-time roster spot with the Bruins for the 82-83 NHL season. After putting up 44 goals and 110 points in 217 regular season games split over 5 seasons with the Bruins, in a completely unexpected twist, MacTavish would miss the entire 84-85 NHL season after pleading guilty to DUI and vehicular homicide charges, when it was discovered that MacTavish had struck and killed a 26-year-old woman while he was driving his car under the influence of alcohol. MacTavish's guilty plea would see him sentenced to just a single year of imprisonment for the offences, where he supposedly spent his time in jail watching every NHL game that was televised in the prison. So much for doing hard time. Once his year in the slammer was up and he was cast back into society, MacTavish was quickly released from his contract with the Boston Bruins. However, the former 9th round draft pick was able to find his way back into the NHL very soon after, as he signed with the Edmonton Oilers for the upcoming 85-86 season. Though you may be a little confused as to how a convicted murderer was able to return to the league so fast and so easily, it was suggested at the time that Bruins general manager Harry Sinden, who felt that MacTavish needed a fresh start away from Boston, called in a personal favour from Oilers general manager and close friend of Sinden, Glenn Sather, in which Sinden would terminate MacTavish's contract with the Bruins, and Sather would then sign MacTavish in order to give him a fresh start in Edmonton. So a man who pled guilty to vehicular homicide was able to return to his life and his career as if nothing happened, thanks to his boss pulling in a favour with his best friend. It really is all about who you know, isn't it? MacTavish would use this move across the Canadian border as an opportunity to get away from the media attention waiting for him in Boston, focus solely on playing hockey, and prove that he was worth taking a chance on despite his past mistakes. Though he had played his entire stint in Boston with a helmet on, having practiced without one for a very long time, and with his move to a new city giving him a chance to change his on-ice image, MacTavish decided that he would make use of the grandfather clause and begin his tenure with the Edmonton Oilers without a helmet. The Oilers' gamble in acquiring a controversial character with a new helmetless playing style would end up paying dividends for them, as MacTavish would go on to play parts of 9 seasons with the Oilers, score his career high in goals with 23 in 85-86, and his career high in points with 52 in 88-89, en route to notching 155 goals and 331 points in 701 regular season games. Not only that, but MacTavish would play his part in helping Edmonton continue their dominant dynasty of the mid to late 80s, scoring 37 points in 113 playoff games, en route to lifting the Stanley Cup 3 times with the Oilers in 1987, 1988 and 1990. Oh, and if all of that wasn't enough, MacTavish also served as Edmonton's team captain between 1992 and 1994. Not bad for a guy who spent a year in prison midway through his career, eh folks? Though he would play pretty much his entire tenure in Edmonton without a helmet on, it is said that during the 88-89 NHL season, MacTavish gave the idea of wearing a bucket one last try. However, after overheating and throwing up on the bench during a game while he was wearing one, MacTavish decided that it wasn't worth the hassle and he would stick to what had worked for him in the past. After all, it's hard to convince a player to put a hat on again if they've won 3 Stanley Cups without one, you know. By the 93-94 NHL season, MacTavish was the only player left in the entire National Hockey League without a helmet on, with other helmetless heroes such as Randy Carlyle, Doug Wilson, Rod Langway and Brad Marsh having called it a day on their respective careers at the conclusion of the season prior. MacTavish would continue to suit up for the Oilers as the only player without a hat on until a late season trade on March 21st, 1994, which saw MacTavish swap Oil Country for the bright lights of Broadway, as he was shipped off to the New York Rangers in exchange for Todd Marchand. The Canadian forward would score 6 points in 12 regular season games and 5 points in 23 playoff games as he helped the New York Rangers clinch the 1994 Stanley Cup, lifting the 4th and final championship of his playing career and cementing himself as the last player in NHL history to hoist the Stanley Cup without wearing a helmet. Following another Cup win, MacTavish took his talents to Pennsylvania and signed as a free agent with the Philadelphia Flyers for the 94-95 season. Though he would continue to play without a helmet on, the centerman would struggle to put up similar numbers with the Flyers compared to years past, scoring 25 points in 100 games split over 2 seasons, before being traded midway through the 95-96 season to the St. Louis Blues. The former 9th round pick would spend the rest of that year as well as the following 96-97 season with the Blues and have even more difficulty producing for his new team, as he scored just 8 points in 63 regular season games. On April 20th, 1997, Craig MacTavish suited up in his final NHL game, going scoreless in his first and only playoff appearance during the 1997 postseason. After the Blues were eliminated from the playoffs and MacTavish's contract with St. Louis was up, the 39-year-old forward decided to hang up his skates and retire from playing pro hockey, finishing his 17-year NHL career with 213 goals and 480 points in 1,093 regular season games, as well as 58 points in 193 playoff games. In doing so, MacTavish became the last player in NHL history to play without wearing a helmet, continuing the tradition alone for an extra 4 years after anyone else had played helmetless. Following the conclusion of both his career and the no-helmet era of the National Hockey League, MacTavish quickly moved himself from sitting on the bench to standing behind it, as he spent 2 seasons serving as an assistant coach for the New York Rangers and a year as an assistant coach for the Edmonton Oilers, before being promoted to the head coaching position in Edmonton for the 2000/01 season. Although MacTavish was able to help the Oilers make a surprise return to the Stanley Cup Finals in 2006, his tenure as coach of the Oilers would largely be remembered as mediocre at best, as he would go on to spend 8 seasons behind the bench, make the playoffs just 3 times, and finish with a 301, 252 and 56 record with 47 ties in 656 games. After being relieved of his coaching duties in Edmonton at the conclusion of the 08-09 NHL season, MacTavish briefly spent some time as a hockey commentator for TSN, spent the 11-12 season coaching the AHL Chicago Wolves, before rejoining the Oilers organization in 2012 as the Senior Vice President of Hockey Operations. MacTavish would serve in his new role for a little over a year, before being promoted to General Manager in 2013. The former captain of the franchise would serve as GM for 2 years, briefly serve as interim head coach, be named Vice President of Hockey Operations again in 2015, before leaving the Oilers organization for good in 2019. Since then, MacTavish has signed a 2-year contract to serve as the head coach of the KHL's Lokomotiv Yaroslavl, but was fired just 8 games into the 1920 season, coached Team Canada as they lifted the 2020 Spengler Cup, and currently serves as the head coach of Swiss National League side Lausanne HC, a position he is expected to continue holding for the upcoming 2020/21 season. Though he only stopped using a helmet midway through his career, thanks to him signing his first NHL contract at the right time and producing a long and successful stint in the best league in the world, Craig MacTavish was able to earn his spot in the hockey history books and carry the banner for those that paved the way before him almost 20 years after the helmet rule was introduced. With 480 points and over 1,000 games played over 17 years, it's clear that MacTavish was able to put his murky past behind him and make the most of his second chance in the league. Whether he deserved that second opportunity or not will always come into question, but if the criticism becomes too loud for him, at least he can block it out by putting his 4 Stanley Cup rings in his ears. And that's the story of the last NHL player to play without a helmet. What do you guys think about Craig MacTavish's record or his career as a whole? Do you think we've seen the last of him in the NHL, or do you think we will see him employed by the Edmonton Oilers once again before he's done working in the hockey world? Let me know in the comments below, I would love to hear what you guys think. But thank you very much for watching, guys, I hope you have enjoyed. Please feel free to like, subscribe, share, or watch some of my other videos. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye! A big thank you to Antti Hannanen, Chris Gadsby, Connor B, Jordan Whitehead, Paul Mallia, Roman from London, The Legacy, and Worthless Pieces, as well as a huge thank you to Max Artis for helping support this video via Patreon. If you too want to help support the channel a little bit further, and get a shout out at the end of every future video, make sure you head over to patreon.com/oddmanrush and become a patron today.